Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Oh, this is really profound. I'll tell you, this is absolutely mind-boggling up here.
Gentlemen, I can well imagine that a foreign planet must be a weird thing to see.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Mission Commander Neil Armstrong would make the first landing on the moon. A civilian, he was one of the hottest test pilots at Edwards Air Force Base. He flew just about everything, including the X-15 rocket plane that traveled to the edge of space. On Gemini 8, Armstrong proved himself under fire. During a docking maneuver, his spacecraft began tumbling out of control. He broke loose from his Agena target vehicle, but the wild spinning was getting worse. Only seconds away from blackout, Armstrong realized a thruster on the spacecraft must be stuck. He fired his re-entry rockets, regained control, and returned home safely. Armstrong now faced the biggest unknown of all, landing on the moon. This vehicle was designed to give him some hands-on experience right here on Earth. Suddenly, the trainer spun out of control. Only 100 feet above the ground, Armstrong ejected and parachuted to safety, unharmed. Edwin Buzz Aldrin would accompany Armstrong to the lunar surface. An Air Force officer, he developed the mathematical formulas for spacecraft to rendezvous in orbit. On Gemini 12, he saw the results of his hard work firsthand. And he spent nearly 6 hours outside his ship, a new world's record. His next venture into space would take him to the surface of the moon. Air Force officer Michael Collins would circle the moon in the command ship, waiting for his comrades to return. The mighty Saturn V rocket made their historic trip possible. It towered 363 feet into the air. The 5 first-stage engines generated 7.5 million pounds of thrust. The huge crawler that brought the Saturn V to the launch pad was an engineering miracle of its own. For German rocket scientist Wernher von Braun and his team of experts, it was a triumph and a lifelong dream about to come true. The moment of truth was almost at hand. The astronauts had trained long and hard. They were ready. And as they made their way to the launch pad, the hopes and prayers of an entire world went with them. The astronauts rode to the top of this space-age Goliath to enter their tiny command ship as the Saturn V stood ready to unleash its fury. A million people gathered at Cape Canaveral to witness the liftoff.
Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Roger, we got a roll program.
Tower cleared.
Roger, roll. Complete and efficient program.
is Houston. You are go for staging.
Staging. And ignition. Houston, Apollo 11 inside and gave us a magnificent ride.
Roger, 11. We'll pass that on, and it certainly looks like you're well on your way now.
From Earth orbit, a rocket burn put them on target for the moon. In their cramped living quarters, the astronauts had everything they needed to carry out their mission: food, water, oxygen, navigation equipment, and controls to keep them on course.
11, this is Houston. You are go for LOI, over.
3 days after leaving Earth, another rocket burn on the back side of the moon. Apollo 11 was in lunar orbit. Rounding the corner, they passed directly above their landing site. Armstrong and Aldrin crawled through the tunnel into the lunar lander, just as they did in this earlier checkout. Then they undocked in their new spaceship, the Eagle.
Roger, Eagle, undocked. Roger, how does it look? The Eagle has wings.
The engine ignited. They began their descent to the lunar surface.
Altitude 4,200. Houston, you're a go for landing, over. Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet. Top alarm.
Their onboard computer was designed to bring them in close to the landing site. Then Armstrong would make the final touchdown. Suddenly, trouble. The computer began sending out alarms. It was overloading.
1201. 1201. Roger, 1201 alarm. We're go. Same type. We're go.
It was a courageous decision. Ignore the alarms and go for landing. The alarms had kept Armstrong too busy to look out the window. But now he did look. The computer was taking them into a field of boulders. He took over the controls and looked for a smooth place to land as the fuel gauge rapidly approached zero. With their lives in the balance, they might soon have to abort the landing.
Looking good, down a half. 6 forward. 60 seconds. Lights on. 6. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward. Good. 40 feet down, 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward. Drift into the right a little. 20. Down a half. 30 seconds. Forward. Just. Good. Okay. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. We copy you down, Eagle. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
They made it, with less than 30 seconds of fuel to spare. Now, through the window, the first glimpse of an alien landscape.
Yeah, but it looks like a collection of just about every variety of shape, angularity, granularity, but every variety of rock you could find.
6 hours later, Neil Armstrong made his way down the ladder.
I'm at the foot of the ladder. The LEM footbeds are only depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of the United States. Surface is fine and powdery. I can pick it up loosely with my toe.
Armstrong gathered up a small sample of rocks and soil. In case of a sudden emergency, they would not take off empty-handed. Then it was Aldrin's turn.
Now I want to back up and partially close the hatch. Making sure not to lock it on my way out. Particularly good thought. That's our home for the next couple hours. We want to take good care of it. Beautiful view. Isn't that something? Magnificent sight out here. Magnificent desolation.
Armstrong unveiled a plaque to be left on the moon.
Dear men from the planet Earth, first set foot upon the moon, July 1969, AD. It came in peace for all mankind.
Then they planted the American flag. Mission Control described the scene to Mike Collins, orbiting overhead.
Oh, it's beautiful, Mike. It really is.
Oh, gee, that's great. Is the lighting halfway decent?
Yes, indeed. They've got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes.
Beautiful, just beautiful.
And now, a phone call from the White House.
For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. And for people all over the world, for one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one.
Honor for us to be able to participate here today. Sometimes it takes about 2 or 3 paces to make sure that you've got your feet underneath you.
The astronauts had no trouble walking on the moon. Loping along in 1/6 of Earth's gravity just seemed to come naturally.
2 or 3 or maybe 4 easy paces can bring you to a fairly smooth stop. Direction. Like a football player, you just have to put out to the side and cut a little bit.
They set up scientific instruments. This device was designed to capture particles from the solar wind. A seismic experiment would measure moonquakes and meteorite impacts. Core samples were taken.
I hope you're watching how hard I have to hit this into the ground to the tune of about 5 inches, Houston.
And a laser reflector would help measure the exact distance from Earth to Moon. The experiments were simple. The journey on the lunar surface, only 2 hours. The goal was to prove it could be done and to get home safely. Future astronauts would build on this historic achievement. Just as Armstrong and Aldrin rode on the shoulders of so many others before them.
Buzz, this is Houston. It's about time for you to start your EVA closeout activities.
Back inside the LEM, a moment of elation for Neil Armstrong.
And you're cleared for takeoff.
Roger, understand. We're number 1 on the runway. Engine arm S in. Proceed. Beautiful. 26, 36 feet per second up. 5 for the pitch over. Very smooth. Balance couple off. Very quiet ride. There's that one crater on there.
Orbiting overhead, Mike Collins watched as the lunar adventurers drew closer and closer. Armstrong and Aldrin transferred back to the command ship for the journey home. Now it was time to relax and have some fun. Buzz Aldrin showed how you make a ham sandwich in space. And Mike Collins took a drink of water in 0G, like a Spanish wine flask. As the moon got farther away and the Earth drew near, the astronauts reflected on the historic journey and the people who made it possible.
We feel that this stands as a symbol of the insatiable curiosity of all mankind to explore the unknown. All you see is the three of us, but beneath the surface are thousands and thousands of others. And to those people, tonight we give a special thank you. And to all the other people that are listening and watching tonight, God bless you. Good night from Apollo 11. You're still looking mighty fine here. You're cleared for landing. Roger, gears down and locked. Apollo 11 lined up right down the middle of the entry corridor. Velocity is now 35,578 feet per second.
They were hoisted on board a helicopter and taken to the aircraft carrier Hornet in special isolation suits. They would spend 17 days in a sealed chamber to be sure they hadn't brought back any moon germs.
President signaling for applause from the crowd. Astronauts gather in the window. That this is the greatest week in the history of the world since the creation. Because as a result of what happened in this week, the world is bigger infinitely, and also the world's never been closer together before. And we just thank you for that.
Then they toured the globe as millions turned out to celebrate the greatest journey in history. Today, visitors at the Kennedy Space Center marvel at the mighty Saturn V, a fallen giant from the past. And the moon is still once more, the machines of man left behind to stand their silent watch. What is the legacy of Apollo? We did not unlock any major secrets of the solar system, but we did learn that lava flows and meteor bombardments both helped shape the early moon. We found aluminum, magnesium, and other metals. Would this lead to a lunar mining operation of the future? If frozen water can be found on the moon, a self-sufficient lunar base might be practical. But more importantly, the Apollo flights have changed the way we look at ourselves and our place in the universe.
We went to the moon as trained observers in order to gather data, not only with our instruments on board, but with our minds. And I'd like to quote a statement from Plutarch, which I think expresses our feelings since we've come back. The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be lighted. Thank you.